So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 1:46 and ask for a moment of reflection. Thank you. Now I'll read the Indigenous Acknowledgement Statement. We would like to begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of the land. The municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18, Region of 1818, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. Cool. Want to approval of the agenda. And I noticed that there was 2 sets of minutes, Sabrina, and so I guess we have to add the February 6 minutes.
Yes, thank you.
Under the D2, yes. And did I get a mover and seconder to approve? Don? Thank you. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd like it to read as amended as opposed to as circulated. So it would be moved by Sean, seconded by Pat, with the agenda February 16, 2023 be approved as amended. Oh, I guess, including any items on the agenda. All in favor? Okay, that's approved. Thank you very much. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Okay, so none. We have a number of reports to be received as information. They are listed here: action plan update for February, CEO service update for February, respectful workplace compliance report 2023, annual risk assessment 2023, gap analysis building program report 2022, Q4 balanced variance report, and proposed 2023 BMPL budget. We have a mover and seconder to receive this. Pat and Julia. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Minutes. So the first set of minutes is the last 40 minutes, January 19th. I did notice that there's name spelling errors for certainly for me and for Julie.
Yeah, Julia, but my family calls me Julie, so I will answer to it.
But you'd rather see it.
Julia, yeah.
Mine is spelled sort of various ways.
We will go through those.
Any questions, comments about this would be the January 19th minutes? Seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder, please? Joanne? Seconder? John? Thank you. All of it? Carried. Then we have the February 6th minutes.
So the second set was done differently than we've done in the past.
Okay.
In the 2018 board, it was actually, that orientation was an official joint meeting where we actually each kept our own minutes. There was a pause where council would accept, then would go to our board. It felt a little disjointed, as opposed to letting us sit and participate. We didn't actually approve an agenda, move any motions. I still kept it as minutes because we were there in an official capacity and we did have quorum, which is why these minutes are just a little bit loose and just saying this is what we were there for and who was present. So I'm hoping that works for us. And if you have a preference moving forward, I don't anticipate us doing this again probably in the 4 years. But we do know that the 2018 was a little strange, having a board table set up where then there were 2 distinct meetings happening at the same time. Both the clerk, actually the clerk, the mayor, and the presenter were really good at saying, you know, this is, you know, Madam Mayor, do you have any questions? And then the mayor would say, does the board have any questions? And is there any questions from the public? So I think that we managed it well in that capacity, but that's why these look a little bit different.
Based on what you just said, I would suggest that the process that was used this year probably would work for the next board as well, based on what you were comparing it with. Not that we experienced the previous one, but this one worked well.
And Laura, you were there for the first one, although it was early in the term. I'm not sure if you remember back to January of 2018, and if that felt a little disjointed.
It felt a bit weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it felt like you were kind of at the small table crashing with the big people. It just did not feel right. Yes, okay.
So I do have a correction to those minutes because I was listed as being there and I wasn't. So I guess I should put motion on the table. So we need approval of the February 6th minutes. Chris and Julia.
Yeah.
And any discussion of those? No, all in favor? Great, thank you. Is there any business arising from either of those minutes?
I'm not sure if there were any questions about the session. Marie was not there, was going to watch it. So if there's questions, certainly we can bring them back to a future meeting again.
It was very well done, I thought. I've had some training before in hospitals, so it was a great refresher.
Mhm.
Good. Okay, let's move on to communications with the board. We've had no deputations registered. There's nobody here to provide input on the agenda. And we do publicly serve correspondence. And do we have people watch the brief video or it's about 4.5 minutes?
I'm not sure, I can play it now. If everybody's seen it, then we don't have to play it now.
Well, people could look at it later. So it's about 4.5 minutes and it really duplicates what's in the printed package that came. So let's not take the time. now.
Okay, it's very well done,
Yeah.
and really, it's giving a primer on public libraries in Ontario, so I encourage you to watch that. In the package, I can give a light update on those. Just so that you're also aware, in addition to being here as your CEO, I hold another role. We are members of FOPL, Federation of Ontario Public Libraries. I'm also the vice chair of FOPL, just so that you know that I'm coming with obviously a passion for what FOPL does on top of that. So the Federation is a lobby body. That is their main function, is to be able to work with the Ontario Library Association, with the Ontario Library Services, who's the ministry's arm to provide services to public libraries, but they work with libraries, not librarians. Whereas the Ontario Library Association is a member group where you as a person join that association. So FOPL serves the libraries. So they serve the library boards, they serve the library as an organization. They work with advocacy when there are problems or when there's financial constraints. So annually, there is an ask that is given to our ministry, which is the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. That's their current name. It will change before your term is done, at least once, maybe twice.
Yes.
Many acronyms. But there are 3 asks that are going to the ministry currently. I will be meeting with our MPP in the coming weeks. I'm meeting with the MPP in the other end of Gray as well. So the Gray Bruce end, as well as our MPP for Gray, for Simcoe Gray. And I'm going to be meeting with 2 separate groups from the Finance Committee, the Standing Finance Committee, providing this information with some of our FOPL and OLA reps. There's 3 things that we're looking at this year, and I won't go line by line through them, but the 3 big areas is looking at funding. So it's all about sustainability. So funding for public libraries and really needing to improve upon what the public library operating grant has provided. The Ontario Digital Library, which is, they put a lot of money into digital projects about bringing infrastructure into rural and northern communities, but now it's time to get the content streaming to people. And our public libraries is the easiest way to do that. So that is not about equality. People have talked about having a quality of service for all communities. We'll never achieve equality for services. It really is about having an equitable base of services. So if you're small, you may not have any electronic materials, or you are limited. So I would say that we're better than most small public libraries, in there with the typical medium public libraries. But if the ministry was to provide sort of a core foundation of these materials to us, some libraries would turn around and say, great, we have money to do other things. And other libraries like us might say, now we can get other things that we couldn't have done before. And then some libraries, very small libraries, this would be the first time they've had these. In 2015, we had a major grant from the government that was tier 1 funding, and we all had them, and it was fantastic. And then the grant ended 3 years later. And at that point, many libraries lost their ability to have electronic resources. So ebooks, audiobooks, ancestry.com, electronic magazines, electronic journals, electronic newspapers, various things that, you know, we just think of as, you want a book, you go to Hoopla, you go to Overdrive. That's what we're talking about, are those types of things. And then the second area that we're going to the ministry is looking for sustainable funding for First Nation public libraries. When I started in libraries in 2007, there were 54 public libraries. Today, there are 39 public libraries, and 6 of them have closed in the past year. So the pandemic really walloped our First Nation public libraries. On average, there are some libraries who are only receiving $15,000 of funding. So trying to run a library on about $15,000 of funding. That means you don't purchase books. You have people give you their weeded copies of books. So your collection is always, at best, 2 years old, maybe more. We might purchase 3 copies or 4 copies of a high interest book, and in 2 years, we only need 2 of them. So you might sell or give away those 2. It's those types of things that they're getting. And, you know, very limited resources. And we know that it's about having a living wage. So not asking for the sky for First Nation public libraries, but certainly asking for a living wage, which according to the United Way is $20.70 per hour of funding, which currently is, they're being paid in most cases less than minimum wage, because they're being given the $13,000 of salary supplement, but they're not working part-time. They're just volunteering the rest of their time. So they're not even making minimum wage in most cases. So those are the 3 asks, and that is the package that is going out. So that's why I included it in here. FOPL is sending it out to all libraries with the video.
So the feds don't pay anything for the First Nations? I know they do for healthcare.
No, so federal government does not do any library service other than Library and Archives Canada.
Okay.
And that's through the Heritage Department, so Ministry of Heritage. There's nothing in the funding envelopes for First Nation from a federal end. It's own source funding, so maybe you have a bingo hall, maybe you have a gas station. Rama has a casino, and some portions of that have always gone to our public libraries in Ontario as sort of a signing bonus. They were required to do that. So there's very little opportunity, since the money that comes into reserves is all put into these envelopes, that it's not like you can say, we're going to take money and move it here, because it's earmarked.
And then I was really surprised to see Ontario only provides 25 million. So, yes, asking for more makes sense, but I don't know, with today's climate, do you think there's much hope?
We've been pushing for this now, the First Nation funding increase for 2 years. We certainly have some interest. People are asking really specific questions. So it is quite possible. The Ontario Digital Library, my personal perspective is if we're going to get any one of these, it's going to be that one.
Okay,
Just because there has been such an uptick
yeah,
from the ministry having to do with connectivity
Yeah.
across rural and northern communities, that I think that's an area that we have our best chance of winning this year. Although all of these cases, we've been fighting for, in many cases, like 5 years. It takes a while before you chip away and make some progress. So we'll keep pushing on that.
Is it the same in every province?
So our Public Library Act is a bit different because it actually includes First Nation public libraries.
Okay.
We're the only one. There are other on reserve libraries, but they're not in their Public Libraries Act, so they're not part of any funding. It would be 100% your community doing your thing. When it comes to digital and connectivity, I think every province and territory is looking at that piece. Whether or not they're looking at an Ontario digital library the way we are. Some provinces are ahead of us. Alberta, for example, has had a one card system, which is a provincial wide system. So they're obviously a bit ahead. That your all branches in Alberta, your two main cities have their independent just because they're larger and it's a different situation. So some provinces are ahead when it comes to digital services. But when the UN report had come out, maybe, I don't remember the year, I'm guessing it's about 8 years ago. And they started looking at connectivity and education as a human right. We use those arguments for why we needed to be putting our connectivity and our online resources into the library systems as core services, because the UN declared them to be human rights.
Craziest thing I saw last year was skiing out at Sun Peaks, and everybody takes all their bottle returns to this one little garage. They make 100,000 a year to support their local library. That's how much they make from doing that. What? I couldn't believe it. You know, it's crazy.
the revenue generation. idea.
It is, yes, it is.
Instead of
Actually,
BDO, I
maybe
guess
we'll
we
go
just-
with that.
Yes, that I was shocked, because as soon as they told me that, I went and I looked, because I knew this stuff went to the BBO, and I looked it up and I said, what? How much do they make at the BBO? And this 100,000.
Is there anything that Opal is asking of us in setting this correspondence?
No, simply to be aware as we're looking at advocacy. Like I said, there are groups across the province that are going to be meeting with MPPs. Being aware that these are pieces that we are looking for, so watch the video so you know general public library service pieces and what Popal is doing. And then certainly read the ask if you come in contact with people that you feel like sharing this information. We know that this is the way it gets out there. In the future, in future years, it may be the kind of thing that when we're doing next year's ask, that a contingent of us might want to go and meet with the MPP and say, you know, these are the types of things that we see here in our community of the town of Blue Mountains. These are the types of things that we see in our riding of Simcoe Gray. And these are the types of things that we realize are important to our province, and that we're all singing from the same songbook on the ask, because it's every library in the province going and giving those same messages are how we make headway.
Sabrina, I know one time we had overdrive and then it was stopped and now we have it again. So is there a different arrangement as to why we have access to it here now? And it's unrelated to what the ask is going forward?
I can't say when they stopped it or why.
Oh,
I know we've switched to Libby, which is just the app that you access Overdrive. It's still Overdrive.
right.
But we do purchase our Overdrive currently as a consortia buying power through the Ontario Library Service. So what we're asking for when they're doing this Ontario Digital Library is that they would use their agency, which is the Ontario Library Service, who already does big purchase power work for us to contract on behalf of the province.
Okay.
So that if we were to purchase Overdrive with our 15,000 community members, we would be paying for something and getting much less. When we start pooling our resources, we always get a better deal. But right now, not everybody's in the Overdrive consortia because some of our bigger libraries purchase on their own. So if we have these opportunities to purchase as a province, the more money we put into the pot, you're still getting the same resources that you were buying before, but it brings others up. So we would see an increase in what we would get, and some of these smaller libraries would get resources for the first time for no cost. So that's really what we're looking for, is saying, like we like to say that here at the town of Blue Mountains, we have one wallet, so let's make sure we're spending accordingly. We're not continually going back. Same thing with the province. Your tax dollars are going forward. So let's make sure that instead of your tax dollars only hitting the one community, that we start hitting our province as a whole for some of these resources.
Great. May I have a motion to receive the correspondence as information? Joanne and Chris. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. So moving on to strategic plan updates. This is really a big part of our agenda. You can see. Let's start out with the action plan update and see if anybody has any questions on anything. And I have a few myself. Start with you guys.
Well, I have questions on the budget, but we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
I think CH1.1, am I saying that correctly? I think we need to maybe at some point, not necessarily today, brainstorm a bit on that, because I'm still not entirely clear how this would make a difference if I talk to my friends and say, this is a wonderful library.
And it's not just that you will say it, it's also knowing what to say. What are these talking points?
Okay,
So most definitely, you're going to find a number of these that are in that October, November, December period that we're going to, in the spring, have some kind of planning meeting where we're talking about those pieces and giving you the talking points, but also having you come forward and saying,
I'm on
these are
this
the
group.
concerns that I'm hearing from community,
Yeah.
so that we frame those talking points. Yes,
that's-
can't do it.
that's helpful.
I can't simply give it to you. I need you to tell me what you're hearing, and then you need to know some of those extra pieces that are gonna make those difference, and that's why we work it as a group. So completely understand the concern. It will sort of flesh itself out over the year, and it'll continue to grow in year 2, 3, and 4 of the term.
I have a question, just thinking about what is being put forward in terms of the overall funding requests and the digital library. So looking at the ES2 about 21st century literacy and resources, just in terms of prioritizing, so, or contingency. So if this doesn't come through, if we don't get as much funding, or we are not, they don't move forward with the digital, are we comfortable with the priorities that are in here, or might we have to update them?
No, so our priorities are based on our budget,
Okay.
or our priorities set the budget.
Okay.
So if there was a change by the province, we probably would not see it until January of 24, because their fiscal is April 1st on. So realistically, we know that that budget, which should be approved by the province on April 1st, will probably be closer to June. Then there will be a holiday, and then they'll start looking at things in September. By the time they do all of the work that they need to do in reaching out to the Ontario Library Service to start doing their work, we may have all of those contract negotiations happening in the fall, which would bring it in for January of 24 in time for next year's budget, but still getting into the last quarter of their fiscal so they can claim it as a success.
Or
So it probably won't impact us at all this year.
this year, so
Yes.
the consideration would be for next year, okay.
It would
That
be in
makes
their Q4, which would be our first quarter of next year.
Okay.
But excellent question. Their timelines and our timelines really don't line up.
Yeah.
So often when you have an ask that you get, it really doesn't impact us this year. We're talking about next year.
And you sound quite optimistic.
Optimistic that we would get it or optimistic that it would fall in that timeline?
The former. That is true too, but I'm.
Yes, yes. That is a best case scenario. As Lori would know, having run many of those joint consortia projects, it is wrangling a bear.
It's always a hurry up and wait, and then
Yeah.
hurry up again. And we used to get the money in September or October, and you had to have it done by the end of March.
Yes.
And there was an expectation
The
that
whole
you've been
year's
spending
worth
it
of
for the whole year,
Yeah.
even though you don't
Have it.
fiscally have any power to spend until you've been told you have it. Yes, these are the issues between
So,
municipality and provincial budgeting, yes.
Do other people have other questions about the action plan?
no,
No,
I do.
Yeah,
Sorry.
good. Go ahead.
Just looking at the job training and programming and resourcing, I guess it's just an idea that's been floating around my head of the library as a central resource, and obviously the challenge that all of our businesses are facing with finding staff, training staff, et cetera. And I'm just wondering if there are initiatives, and again, my role as board member versus doing stuff. But I think it's OE4 or ES1 where this fits, but an opportunity to explore sort of career development. Have, the local businesses talking about who we are, what we do, because I think there's certainly people who are moving here, probably don't even know the businesses that are here. And just an opportunity for career planning, career exchange. I think you were talking about retired nurses and other opportunities, I'm just wondering if that can be a consideration. Because I don't, and it was completely anecdotal that somebody was mentioning that they had graduated high school, felt that they, from, I think Meaford, didn't really know what was here, and felt like they wanted to stay in town, but they weren't sure, and people over at the university, et cetera. So I wonder if we always think that everybody knows everything that's going on, that even just that little bit of information sessions might be helpful, and also might, certainly community as a hub, I think might answer a number of the strategic things, but it's just a thought.
Okay.
Information sessions on what?
So as a library and resource, if you're thinking about any career, what does it do? Where does it? So you could start here in terms of understanding what a career path might look like in a certain career, or maybe there's certainly either you're starting a new career because you've retired and you're looking for something else, or you're just moved to something else. And then I'm thinking about businesses themselves. So if the manufacturers or anyone, the farmers, et cetera, almost education nights about here's what it is, if you're going to run your farm, we need to finance it. This is, you could actually be an accountant supporting farmers. You could, there are a lot of things that people might not think about. So again, not a fully formed idea, just more facilitating information exchange, and the library is a place to find out more about jobs, training. I think it was triggered also because I didn't realize that we have access, or I just realized we have LinkedIn, the LinkedIn learning access. So there's quite a few courses there that employers actually like to see on resumes. So it's just a small thing, an idea for to facilitate.
I'll add that onto our list and bring it back to our group and see where they feel we could fit in with some of the sort of career. We wouldn't be giving them, but we would be facilitating others to come in.
Yeah.
Most of what we have on that tends to be single group oriented. So Blue Mountain comes in and does their fair here at Ellie Shore. Some of the manufacturing groups, they come in and they do their fair. This is what we're looking for. We've not pulled together multiple groups together to come in, because it's usually they come to us when we're ready to hire. Right,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
like, you know, the resort will come in 3 weeks later is when they're going to do all of their interviews, so this is your chance to come in, get some information one-on-one, complete your resume, drop it off. And then we'll be calling people for interviews in 2-3 weeks. So I'll have to look to see how we can pull things together and if there would be an interest in that.
With that Chamber of Commerce, I'm just wondering, thinking of what I don't know, I haven't been with this community, but Chamber of Commerce seems to me it would be something more that Chamber of Commerce might do, or I don't know.
It could be. I'm more taking a step back as the library as a resource.
Yes.
As facilitating a resource and also being that a connector and resource for all of the constituents. So whether you are the Chamber of Commerce or the VIA or an individual business or someone who's just moved here who's like, I'd really like to get a new job, you know, that was where I was going to be more as a resource. But as I said.
So does the town have a sort of a map of the businesses and industries that are in town?
They do. Economic Development Department does that.
Because it seems to me that's a good starting point. So what is represented in town and what are some of the, I don't know, skill groups or whatever? I think it's a really good idea. I'm
Yeah,
just wondering if maybe
Yeah.
looking at economic development is part of the basis of doing something like that.
And I think the second career is another piece, maybe third career for some people. But the pseudo retired, people who think they're going to retire. Come and then find that they're going to do something else. I think that's also an interesting group to be able to provide information to.
Yes.
Again, not career development, but that is one of the groups that we promote. It used to be lynda.com, now it's LinkedIn Learning, because there are pieces when you're starting your own business, moving to consulting, that you may have done the field, but you haven't done a piece of that field if now you're the consultant in that field. So those are pieces that we find of interest by some of our community members.
Is there a way of setting up sort of a mentoring relationship as part of this? You know, if somebody's interested in getting to a certain field and someone's interested in to help work that person. I mean, I've seen some libraries where you borrow a person for an hour. And so you're looking for particular expertise.
Check out a human book.
Yeah, and then have a conversation with them. Yeah. We'll leave that with you for now, shall we? Other questions, thoughts around the action plan from anybody? I have a question about CH 2.1, which is about the East End hub. I'm wondering if we have any sense from the new council about directions in terms of the East End. That could be it. Who knows?
I'll start with that. Sean may want to jump in as well. I have not received any official information that the new council is even entertaining what the previous council was considering. We do know that there has been land which is being purchased that we may or may not be included in. We also know that, you know, there was first step looks from the previous council, but the new council is just still getting up to pace in areas. On January 30th, when I did the orientation, I did bring in some of those talking points that this is a piece that will come back. We're going to have conversations, I'm not going to bombard you with it, but it wasn't a case that we shied away from. We made sure that there was an awareness that when they were ready to have that conversation, we would be at the table. We shouldn't be a second thought at the table because we're going to be an anchor in the building if that's going to happen. I don't know if Sean has.
What I can say is that it's it's present at the table. Because I'm not allowed to say,
I
So,
believe the council
I'm not-
heard what we said.
yeah.
When we did the
Yes.
January 30th presentation, there was nobody who said, what?
Yeah.
What building? Like it hadn't been talked about. So it did not, there was scanning the room, did not make me feel that there was any single counselor who was hearing that for the first time.
Yeah, it's,
Yes.
I'm bound by closed session, so I
Yeah.
can't say anything, but everybody's aware. It's been made crystal clear as to exactly what it was, because at first, some thought, well, what's wrong with the library? It's not that there's something wrong with the library, it's an expansion. So, yeah, it's on the radar.
Yes. So I do think that there'll be, council has a lot of moving parts in their first 6 months of their term. I do anticipate that once the budget is done, that I will be having some conversations with our CAO about where is the new council on this? Do we need to bring a deputation forward just to give a little bit more information about when we talk about needs that they truly understand, and it's our voice coming forward of what is the needs here at Ellie Shore? What are the needs here from an equity of community service between East and West End? At this point, all eyes are on getting through their budget process. So I would think that this is something that we will be talking about maybe at our April meeting about preparing for a deputation, just to give some groundwork information for them so that as they're having further conversations, as there's closed door discussions about land, which we know that's where they're going to happen, that at least they've heard from us the types of considerations that we have, so that we don't miss an opportunity. And then after the fact, it's oh geez, had we known that, we would have thought differently about that property. So those are things we want to make sure that we're there, but I don't think the council is at that place yet, but they'll be there very soon.
Good, thank you.
So the statistics, so I'm just still trying to orientate myself to how the meetings work. So that's through this action plan update, or is that a separate agenda item?
Separate agenda item.
Sure, with the CEO report, yes, so that'll be our next, after this one, we'll make sure that everybody has gotten through all of the 80 items, that you have no other questions, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
I'm sure there'll be more focus once we get
Oh, I
into the
see.
details
Yeah.
of implementation.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. You review them at different meetings.
My only other question on the action plan at this point is under CH 2.3, is if there's any role for the board just now, and this is the one that says partner with TBN to expand outreach services into TBN facilities across municipality.
So that one was really about, the goal is developing multi-use spaces and provide outreach services. I don't think we have any need for the board at this point, but we will be soon at a point where we want to go back and start looking at Ravenna. So the original plan, that came from community in our consultation was being able to have more services in Ravenna, not to put a building in Ravenna. You have one building here, we're hoping to have our Craigleith service, and that will be our 2 hubs in the community. But to be able to do some outreach services. So we are currently using Ravenna Hall for occasional programs. We kind of slack off in the winter on those, just because people were more willing from anywhere in the community to go there when it was better weather. Even our school buses are a little bit more difficult to get drop-off times in the winter. But one of the outreach services that we were looking to do at Ravenna Hall has since fallen through. And that is to have, they're referred to as lockers. They look very much like a mailbox, where you would open up your community mailbox, and in there, instead of getting your mail, are your materials. The way those are done is it's a locker, it requires electric, and it requires connectivity. So we had asked to be on the property of Ravenna Hall, not in the building, but in like the parking area, so that one car could pull up, could go to that. It would be powered by Ravenna Hall. It would already have the connectivity there because connectivity is present. And then you are given a code, just like when you get a hold slip that comes in your email that says, you know, your materials are available at, it would say your materials are available at your chosen pickup spot of Ravenna Hall instead of Craigleith Heritage Depot or Ellie Shore. And your 3-digit code is, or you use your PIN, which is, you know, the last 4 digits of your phone number, and you're in locker A2. And you go to the 10 lockers that are there, you put in your code and you open it up. And by opening it, it automatically checks out the materials to you. We know you've picked it up. You also can drop your books in to a return bin there. And when you return them, it scans your book and it tells us the books are there to be picked up. So we don't have to just keep checking at Ravenna Hall. We know when it's there. So the connectivity is required. In discussions, what happened is it moved from being potentially there to know it can't be there. We're changing the way our parking lots are going to be, but we could possibly put you at the corner. Well, the corner does not have connectivity. So it doesn't work. So we'll be back to the drawing board of trying to get, again, another conversation about going back to Ravenna and why we need that particular site. And hopefully that's something that we'll be able to work together with. We've missed the budget period for it this year. But we would want to have our conversations completed by September of next year, summer, so that at September 1st, it's already a budget ask. It's going into the budget package. People know that it's coming. The lockers are upwards of 65,000. And, you know, the installation includes a concrete base, which is probably another 2,000 or 3,000. And then after that, it's just tying into, you know, no different than a electric grid. But it has to be at those sites. So that's something that we would be bringing forward.
Couldn't it be done after the parking lot has been, dealt with?
I believe that the issue is that they were trying to remove people from being there.
Nobody to park there.
The parking, they want to put in a parking area along the road. They want to move my understanding was that they were looking to move the mailboxes, widen up on a bit of the lawn so that the parking would be
In the front,
at the road,
not the
parking
side.
that way and not on the lot proper,
Oh,
which would mean that us saying we want someone to stop and retrieve the materials would be at a parking lot that may not exist.
oh, that's interesting.
So there was a lot of work because the roads were being done
Yeah,
and things
no,
like that.
they just done
Right,
that.
so now that the roads are done and what was originally discussed with us, I don't see has happened there.
No, it hasn't.
The budget process is passed. Now it's time to go back and start having the conversation again. Because since that parking area did not happen and I didn't see the mailboxes move there,
No.
we might have the ability to come back again and say, so that didn't happen. So can we now put this back on what we talked about? And it would be a case of, do we bring that to budget discussion? And then looking at the board and saying, are you interested in, are we asking council to put the full amount in? Are we looking to take some of our money out of reserve and put, you know, a 50-50? If council says no, is this something that the board has the ability to do or interest in doing? Or is it something we're just telling our rural community, we can't do it at this point? But we do have to have some communication back to our community in Ravenna because it was one of those key areas that was mentioned at several of our discussions.
Does this machine have to be inside or is
No.
it made to be?
They're meant to
outside?
be outside. They're
Really?
designed just like mailboxes, only they have connectivity
Yeah.
and electric built in. I
Okay,
wouldn't put like technology and laptops in them because you can have a cold book, but.
yeah,
yes.
no, I
But
just because, you know,
but yes, they are fully designed to be outside, watertight.
the wind and the rain and
They're,
the snow and the ice. and all that
they
stuff.
look just like your mailboxes, just bigger.
Hmm.
And the typical
Interesting.
opening is, you know, like what you would have in the community mailbox down at the bottom where they leave the packages, but they're all that size and you pick how many rows and columns you get.
Hmm.
Is it a big one like a wall or is it a low one that might have only 10? Yes, so fully functional, it would not be in the building. We want people to have access to it 24/7. So it'd be outside.
Do you have a sense that it'll be really used?
I think so, based on what people have asked for from a Holds pickup. I know, even at the depot, we have very few people who go to the depot and browse. And the ones that do tend to be more of our vacationers who are right around the corner and they're looking for a quick thing for their kids. I forgot to bring videos. I didn't think we were gonna have connectivity. We don't have it, there's a DVD player. Can I grab 5 videos? And then Holds pickup is what we get right now at the depot, given the size, because we don't have a browsing collection. So I think that Ravenna groups, people would be very interested in that, knowing that, you don't have to come in to get something. It's going to be there twice a week and you can pick it up.
Yeah, actually. Everything can be done digitally now, so. I'm good.
So I do think this is something we'll have to be working with. I will schedule my next meeting with the CAO, and that'll be one of my big points of discussion is where are we with this project, since the original discussion fell through, but then the rationale for why it fell through also
longer
fell through.
exists.
It didn't happen. Yes.
Yep, good, okay, thank you. So moving on to F2, the first is about community hubs. We had the tour of the facility at the top of the meeting, and I think you did a good job of identifying the building gaps. One of the other things that I wanted to see if there's any other questions about that tour or thoughts on what you heard today. Okay, so that was really about, I guess it also was covered in the gap analysis building report. So you had a tour and you also got to read in advance about that. The other item, since those are about the problems with the existing building, they're not really about opportunities for the services that we could have here. And maybe that's something we could talk about. I don't know if we want to do it today in any depth, because I think there's some context you might want to provide to that.
Certainly.
And I wondered about even seeing the building plans that the previous board had worked on, actually 2 boards ago, which gives us some sense of the directions that we were thinking about for this building, as well as all the time we were looking at CHD and how it might be expanded. But conceptually, some of the ideas are still the same. And it was how do you balance with a 2-branch system as opposed to the 1 branch? Because right now the service is pretty Thornbury centric. And if you're in Ravenna or if you're in Craiglee, you really don't have really close library service.
And the gap analysis spoke to the CHD Ellie Shore relationship, but we know that the town has said it won't be CHD that is expanded to make that larger library hub. If we're going to do this, it's going to be part of a municipal complex that we're going to have that. That does not impact CHD. We're not going to remove CHD or lose CHD. It just means we're not going to get that expansion to CHD. So in that, the building reports that we provided in the gap analysis will then focus on maintaining CHD, but there's still some limitations of, even as a museum, on what we can do, that we need to make sure that we're building those in to the next place. There were pieces of Ellie Shore that we said, well, we can get away with not doing that here if we're putting this into the new CHD building. If it's not going there, it needs to go into a new library in Craigleith. And if it's not happening in Craigleith, it needs to happen here. So we've always decided, and the town senior administration had agreed, Ellie Shore is a community hub. When you look at the leisure study report that came out in 21, that was one of the documents that they said, Ellie Shore is like a one-liner, like we're talking about leisure studies and what we need in the future. We're not talking about Ellie Shore because we know it's a hub. We're not touching it. We're not taking it away. So Ellie Shore is the West End hub. There may be other pieces that are there, but they know this is a place that needs to stay in that way. Additionally, we need to figure out what needs to happen in this building Because although it was modern in 1995, and it still meets our needs now as being a modern library, as you saw, there are significant gaps that we need to fill. Do we fill them here? Do we fill them over in another facility where we say the new facility will have the teen area? That's great, but we still have to address the fact that we can't plug in a coffee pot in the building without browning out. We can't continue to have washrooms that the pipes have disintegrated, that don't meet AODA. And yes, you can get away with not fixing them because we're grandfathered under accessibility, but that doesn't mean that you are accessible. And we have never said that we want to meet AODA. We say that we want to be accessible. There's a big difference. Meeting AODA means if you touch it, you have to meet the legislation. But because it's a 1995 building, as long as you don't touch it, it's fine. We know it's not fine. If you can't get a scooter into a bathroom, you can't get a scooter into a bathroom. So that's why we've tried to focus on those, that no matter what we do in another facility, there are still needs at LA Shore, and we can't say, well, then LA Shore will be just fine. We're a community who talks about no single-use plastic. Why can't you fill a water bottle in this building then? You can't. There's nowhere to go. The bathroom sinks, you can't do it. The bathroom sinks also lend you to question, should you be putting your water bottle in a bathroom sink in a public place? Very questionable. The only place that you could do it would be to hand it to a staff person who would then walk into our private space to do it. Same situation. We should have the water fountains that are no longer what you think of in school water fountains, but the water fountain that you put your water bottle in, and that's what it does, is it's there to fill a water bottle. To do that, we need to do construction in this place because there's nowhere that we can put it. Where there is water that has enough of a walking path that you could actually give up the space to install it and have a person stand there and not block traffic. So it's little things, but it's all of those pieces that up that say, this is a 27-year-old building and there are things that need to be done. So yes, I would like to put that onto maybe the March or April agenda, depending on where we are, and bring some of those other pieces back, and we can expand on them and really spend kind of our spring talking about our facilities so that everybody is on the same page on the types of things that we need. So when we do make it to council and we do make it to public discussions, that we're all very versed on what all of the facilities are needing, so that no matter who's being asked a question, we're comfortable being able to respond.
Okay, so the main part of that number of F2, number 3 is about, will be for the March agenda. Yeah. Okay, anything else on community hubs before we move on to empowering services? Okey-dokey. In that case, it's the CEO service update for February. That's the agenda item we're on.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so I'll do a quick walkthrough. I know we walked through it last month, but I'm sure last month was a bit of a whirlwind, given the first meeting and being a full day with some training in the beginning. So what I do each month is I provide stats and an overview of what has happened the previous month and any key highlights I want you to know that's coming up this month before the next board meeting. We don't want to only give them as what happened last month and you say, well, had I known, I would have attended that too. So we do try to give you a bit of a highlight of what's coming. Section C is our statistics, and last month and this month are always a little bit weird when you're reading them because of the year shifting. So there are 4 columns, and this is what it will usually look like. The first column of the current month will give you the current month that we're looking at, which technically is last month, but it's the current month of January 23. We then give you next to that our comparables, and we have 2 columns for those that we have grayed out so that you know those are comparables. And the first is the previous month. So that would be December, which also when you're thinking about it, is kind of your end of year, which is why last month was a little confusing because we were talking end of year as well. The column to the right of that, your third column, is the comparable for the same time last year. So column 1, current month, January 23, column 3, January of 22. You can look at those side by side and say, active users, we have 115 more active users today than we did last year at this time. The last column is the year-to-date of 2023. So at this point, the first and fourth column match, but next month, it'll continue to grow, where we're only going to be looking at next month, February of 23, and then it'll be year-to-date for January, February as we're going. So it's just a little weird on that one. So we always have those 2 months where people go, wait a minute, why are the numbers the same? But it's because of the year end and beginning of the year. On those, the statistics are yours to tell me what you would like to see. So these are very operational, and I try to put it all in one place so that you don't have to get bogged down with operational. But at the same point, I don't want you to be in the dark about what we're doing. You are the governance body, you are the fiduciary body, making sure that we are running our organization the best that we can, that we're using our community tax dollars the best that we can. I will answer anything operational that comes my way. So I do have basic areas about how many users do we have? What's our circulation versus our digital circulation? BiblioBoard is our virtual museum exhibit. So it's a little bit different there. We also have a virtual gallery, which is the art gallery, the Ellie Shore gallery here. Research requests are almost always coming through the museum. Occasionally we have somebody who's doing work on a book that might come to us on other things, but they tend to go to their local university because they're looking for academic materials. So almost all of our research requests are going to come through the museum, and it tends to be things like genealogy, or I'm writing a book about this Indigenous group that lived here during this period. What can you provide to me? I'm a railroad aficionado. Can you please tell me about Grand Trunk? Can I have pictures for a book? Those types of things are our research requests. Our museum visits currently are only listing the book club because the museum is closed during the restoration. We are nearing the finish line on that. And you can see last month there were 49 people that came in January of 22. We were still open, but kind of wishy-washy on COVID protocols because that building was so small. Tours and visits, again, you'll see there were 0 in January of 22, and that's because the schools did not allow their children to leave the schools in the 21-22 education year. So we had no classroom visits and no tours, again, because of COVID. This is a more typical month of 451. The previous month of December at the end of the year was a bit low. December tends to be teachers are trying to wrap things up and not getting more things into their classrooms. Our programs, again, you'll see are pretty standard. And then our YouTube views is another one that I wanted to point out. You'll see that it's the third from the bottom, that in last month, we're right about 3,000, 2,940. And last year at this time, we were over 4,000. Again, that was a pandemic bump. We weren't doing as many programs, and the programs that we had, many people didn't want to come to, but our online programs were very successful. So those are some of those differences in there.
And the volunteer hours, is that a function of not having as many programs and maybe not needing as many volunteers, or just versus January?
Just where we are. Yeah. So it just ended up with how many people are not currently volunteering.
And Julia, you had your hand up.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is lovely to get a sense of the scope and volume of things, but my question, when I look at it from a governance perspective, is what is desirable? Like, is it, I'm assuming just more is always good, is it? Like, do we have like a target that we would like to see? that to me is just kind of missing. It's like,
Mhm.
and COVID certainly, because we don't just have we've had such a strange few years. So I don't know, is more better in everything? Or at some point, it would be diminishing returns, I'm sure. I mean, there's not enough budget to have double the books, like,
Right, I don't think that. Well, more is always better. Whether there's impacts on those, certainly. When it comes to us hitting targets, we punch well above our weight class. So of a library of the size of our community, we are excessively above standard. We have high usership, we have high turnover of materials, we have in some cases twice as many
some of that
materials.
showed up
Yeah.
in that other report.
Mhm.
Yes, when you're looking at
Yeah.
the gap analysis, you can see where in many cases we're number one in the top three. So certainly we have, our statistics are going to far outweigh and outskew many others. And then there's other things that we do that many libraries serving a community our size don't do at all.
Yeah, so I guess it's just hard to interpret. Is this good? I'm assuming it's good because I see, same thing as you. Oh, there's more active users than in the previous month.
Is it not also connectivity of available resources for the activity that you're
Mhm.
stating here? So in other words, do we have the human resources and any other
Mhm.
supplies that are needed, whether it's books or anything else? So in other words, are they matching up? So it's giving us a framework of how to interpret the value of this or where you want us to go with it.
Yeah, and it's really just a snapshot to have an idea. So I guess the question that I have for the board is every board is going to want different information. Every board is going to want it presented differently. Maybe over the next, month or two, as you're looking at the report, you can determine what it is that you need to be able to make decisions. Knowing if the service is what you want it to be. And if, there's gaps in information that you're looking for. So certainly let me know if it's a case that I need to explain some things to get you to a point where you're feeling comfortable with it, or if there's different information. We sort of do the dance in the beginning to make sure that it's meeting your
I think
needs.
it's more in terms of you guiding us to say the impact of all these numbers is X, Y, Z.
Yes.
And that is a cause for concern or a cause for celebration.
The biggest impact is from a staffing end.
Yeah.
We do not have the staff to do the things that we could be doing and should be doing. We don't have the budget to increase the staff either, and it's not gonna happen. You'll see when we look at the budget, there is a slight deficit this year, there'll be a slight deficit in 2 years, and then in 26 is when we come out of that. And that was the major change in the wages that happened, were approved in 21, enrolled in 22. We had 2 options, and that was know that it's gonna be really rough or layoff. Because the wages increased so much for people because we were so below par, that we could reward a few and lay off others, which would have made a horrible impact on our service model. Or know that we were gonna have to really tighten the belt and potentially work with some deficit, which we can't have a deficit. That means we have to dip into other areas. And we just sort of scraped the bones on everything else that we could do to really make it all about wages at this point. But for the amount of circulation, for the amount of programming that we have, we really should have another 2 FTE. That's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen in our budget. And for us to get to that point might be about 4 years down the line that it would happen. That also has a direct impact on third building, that it's not happening with the same dollars. So there is going to be a discussion with council that says a 6% tax levy is for our 2 facility museum, which is a skeleton crew, skeleton hours, and fully functional library service here. But when we go to a second building, that tax levy is going to increase because you are going to duplicate hours and wages and operational dollars with some materials. But your service model is going to be different. And saying that you open a building in Craigleith does not mean that this goes to half the hours, so half the hours can go there. You're talking about expanding service, not reducing service. So those are things that we'll be looking at from numbers.
But if you needed 2 more full-time equivalents now to accomplish what you want to accomplish, you're not getting those, so that means you have to then cut back on services somewhere,
Yes,
so.
and there are areas that we really limit some of the things that we do, and we do a lot of things through partnership to bring other people in. We did cut our Sunday, so the odds of Sunday coming back is just non-existent. Originally it was cut because of pandemic and having people working from home. Now it's really a case of, as wages have increased, it's the easy place to say, let the Sunday go, and it's, 2 less shifts that we have to fill and backfill people into the other shifts.
Yeah, so you've made some of those decisions.
We've made some of those operational pieces happen already, yes.
I noticed, and it comes probably coming later in the budget, but I noticed that the benefit costs are up substantially. And you did mention more full-time, but I didn't see full-time salaries go up as much as the benefit costs. Is that just, do you have a new provider through the town, or is it more sick time?
We can certainly get into that when we get into the finance, but it is about moving people from part-time to full-time. Their wages didn't change, but we add on the benefits.
Right, but I didn't see the salaries go up as much.
Right, because there used to be 2 people at 20 hours. Now we take 1 person at 40 hours.
But even the full-time salaries didn't go up as much as the full-time, the benefits went up as a percentage more than the full-time salaries went up.
Because of the shift, right? It's like if they were a contract and then they wanted to be pension, they wanted to be full-time.
It also switches between.
Yeah.
Somebody then gets married and it's a marital as opposed to a single. All of those things impact. We pay more for family coverage than single coverage. And we can get to that when we're in the
That
finance.
makes sense, more to family. But I know in healthcare, certainly the benefit costs have risen hugely because of people just don't come to work sick anymore, which we never should have.
But they did it anyway.
But we did it, right?
We all did, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So outside of that, then I won't go through the report. These are pieces if you have questions. But I try to break it down by library service, museum service, gallery service, so that it isn't a case of facility to facility. It's really the parts of the GLAM. A bit about staffing, and then some of our communication pieces. You'll also see at the end of each paragraph or each content bit, I try to give you what the code is that brings it back to our action plan. We don't do things that don't relate back to our overall strategic plan and our annual action plans. Then some general numbers here about what our communication numbers are, our various blogs. You'll see currently we have 130 people that are receiving our key messages, which is the monthly governance document that goes out, and a little over 1,500 for our general news. We may find that some of these blogs will shrink in the year, and that's because of our new electronic newsletter has more flexibility. Instead of it being a print 2 pages that we sent out as a PDF, to do a small snippet that brings you to a page. And as we start promoting things better that way, people may fall off of the other blogs because it's all falling into the main. So don't panic if you see these numbers go down, as long as the library news doesn't go down. Because we're going to start to embed more in there, so everybody is getting things about governance and not saying, if you want it, go to this one. It's, here's your snippet, feel free to read it, it's all in one.
Could you do a graph for maybe our next meeting though of the over maybe the last 5 years or so, just not with everything, but maybe you could lump some of them together just so we could see what it was like before COVID, like circulation and those numbers. That to me would be useful, it would help me know. Just visually, it'd be easier than trying to interpret the numbers.
Sure.
Just a total year, kind of.
I'll do a comparative for a few years back so that we can see,
Yeah, whatever's most,
at least as long as I've been here, so we'll have the
Yeah,
year of
that'd be
18
great.
forward, I can't.
Yeah.
I don't know what statistics were available outside of the annual survey to the government for 17 back, but I can certainly grab the 18 forward, so you
yeah, I
get
don't think, I mean.
2 years before pandemic, your weird bubble of the 3 years in the
Yeah.
middle, and then now.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to come back to how best to communicate. Because we all need to agree on the numbers that we want to see and how we want to see it. And instead of us each throwing you, oh, I'd like to see this and I'd like to see that, I'm just wondering if it would make sense for us to, maybe I'll share, here's, I'm thinking similar to you, I'm thinking index it to 2018, although the population is so much bigger, it at least as an index would give us an idea of where we stand. And then also potential needs, so CHD, like what was the traffic like before, all of that, those kinds of things. But again, don't want to be throwing a whole bunch of individual requests. So I don't know if, not sure how to facilitate that, but maybe we just sort of share some, here's the kinds of things that I'm thinking of and you're thinking of, and you'd like to see the following, and then we have one. We present you with here are different here's different ways we'd like to see the information, or the information we'd like to have, and then you can sort of look at it in a consolidated form as opposed to sort of one-off, just
I'm also wondering how we tie it back into our goals and objectives, our pillars and whatever they're called now. Because you mentioned CHD and, trends with CHD, for example, so that's, that's one of our community hubs. So what's changed there that drives us to the fact that, we need another facility. So it's stuff that ties into what we say we're trying to accomplish.
yes, yeah. So what are those? Okay, so.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm happy to pull it all together. If people want to email me their thoughts, I'm happy to put that all into one document again, I just don't want you getting just like react in there, and then maybe we can sort of build that, just collectively as
I think it's
sort
kind of early in the
reporting.
game for that. Meeting.
Yeah.
I'd like to give it a couple more meetings and see
what's gonna generate some questions for you, what might pop up that some of us are missing.
Yeah.
I think that's important, like, it's very good information. Okay, now as I'm looking at it, what are the things that I might want to question? And it's so thorough.
Yeah, well, reporting is always an evolving challenge.
And there may be comparator communities that make sense for us to look at, which we did in the gap analysis.
Yeah.
But I know, when the previous mayor was looking at the 6% tax levy business, he was looking at how other libraries were funded in the area, and they picked out certain ones. And with the HR stuff they did, they looked at particular comparators as well. So that may be part of the context for us, is who are our comparators, and then how do we stack up against them, and why we're better, why we're worse, what we learn from that. I wonder if it's something that goes into our planning meeting discussion. We haven't actually got scheduled at this point, but that's a full day meeting where we try to tackle some of the larger questions rather than being driven by that stuff we have to do on a monthly basis.
Almost like planning for a balanced scorecard kind of thing, right, where it's volume against, yeah, I hear you, I think that would make sense, but I agree, it's a bit soon to.
I think some of this might come out as we get into more of our action plans, linking back to our strategic plans and getting more details around some of that too. Because I think that's where most of our thinking and planning will go forward.
Can I ask, sorry, another question? Just as it relates to the newsletters and the website visits, are you tracking actual like user tracking through the website to see where follower drop off is and
Yes.
things like that? Okay. I'd love to see that. It's just an area that I work in. I'd love to see, just because it does inform it helps because what we have is overlap, right? You have people coming into the library, also have people doing it online, and they might be doing two different things, and, I'd just be curious, it's a curiosity. of
Is
mine,
that
if
something
you
that
have
you would
something
like to have,
on everybody.
our manager of tech services come in and do a presentation in a future meeting?
I think that would be helpful.
It's interesting because it does, I mean, really what it shows you is where people, how many people are going to what sections of the website. And visits per page and where they tend to fall off or where they tend to go. And there's just interesting, it certainly informs you in terms of areas of interest and, there's indecisions on where, what you might promote more versus less in terms of what people are doing, especially when you have a physical building to compare it to.
And it's a new website, so it's
So it might
it's
maybe
significantly
be
changed
Yeah,
from
yeah.
22 wouldn't really matter because it's a totally different website. We launched on January 10th. So that could be something potentially either in our planning, or it could be in April. Because March, this month's stats and last month's stats are still people figuring out
Yes.
where things are.
Yeah.
But once we get into March and on, then the usership will be,
Yeah,
there'll be
having
a
the
cap on what
months
they're
of-
doing, yes.
Yeah, of traffic is good and it informs planning. So, yeah, a couple of, not immediate.
I can do that from, just as an information piece, if that's something that you're interested in. I will tell you, it will be our manager of tech services. I bank on her for that information because it is
Yeah.
far beyond my skill set. I
Yeah,
take
that's
the
perfect.
information and I say, thank you, and we work together to figure out where to go, but that is, Elisa will be our person for that.
Great.
Great. Anything else on the CEO service update? Okay. Then let's move on to organizational excellence. And I don't have too much to report in my chair's report. I did attend the January 30th orientation to council, as did Pat and Joanne. And it was actually a whack of time we got to present to council, which was great. It was a really good, thorough orientation. And I thought you did a great job.
Yeah, yes, it was excellent. Very impressed.
Yes.
We've gotten some very good feedback from community members, either who watched or who were present, that they thought it was a good explanation, planted seeds on areas that they felt would be coming back to council in the future. Some of the reports that were requested from council, but also the building project, that they could see that was well planted. And then there was also, just comments about just the level of, the level in which it was presented, that it was concise and understood by council. So community members said that they really appreciated it.
Yeah, my only other involvement has been just helping develop this agenda. The next question is a discussion connecting with councils, and that goes back to the action plan, which is about, what's the number here? OE 4.2. Just to remind you, hold semi-annual informal coffee meetings with board member and council members. So that was meant to be a sort of one-to-one meeting with people, a couple times a year. And really just to make sure we have a relationship. So when we're at a council meeting, no one goes, who are they?
Yeah.
I wondered if we were in a position now to think about who we each might individually want to meet with, or do we want to, look at the bios on the website and see what you think there might be a good match, and then come back next meeting and say,
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I'd enjoy connecting with so-and-so to get started. And it may also be a bit early for everybody. You may not feel you have enough grounding in the library yet to get to do too much, but.
I don't want to talk to any of those people.
I think you get it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Well, I think there's 7 of you and there's 7 of them, so I think you're gonna be talking to a gentleman called Sean at council.
Yeah. Yeah, that's conversations.
Conversation with yourself over tea.
Yeah, now some of them might be, it'll be scheduling, right? Because some of them are still in Florida and in North Carolina now or somewhere.
I take care of all of the scheduling.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
not sure when they're back, is all I'm saying, but
I would guess that we probably would be looking at spring, maybe before or just after the planning. We try to do at least 2 or more with meetings, just to try to get that dialogue going and, you know, really learn who it is that sits around the table.
mhm. Make sure you put that big bold italics, mandatory,
Mandatory, yes. I actually
We-
sit on
we
the
must
committee.
have a discussion.
That makes it easy.
Yeah, actually, I was surprised she popped up in the same committee. June Porter sits on the same, another committee with me. She was there.
So I heard a couple of other comments, but I think people drowned each other out, so I think, Joanne. you
Sorry, I
wanted
was
to say something?
I think the timing spring makes more sense. I don't feel at this point that I would be spending their time. It would be worthwhile.
Would feel
In terms of, yeah, in terms of my knowledge, but also in terms of what, you know, we might be talking about for planning, so I think that's good.
Okay, and so, and I thought that sort of check out the bios and, or maybe
Yes.
you're on the same committee, maybe that's sort of a good opening for you. And then we'll maybe put it on the planning agenda, which sounds like it might be landing in April. Okay, does that make sense?
So planning, have we set the date for that, just?
It is a set date, we just have to make sure everyone can do it for full day.
Okay.
Oh, what is the day?
So,
What's the date?
yeah, the date would be, if she looks it up. April 20,
What day of the week is that?
so they're all Thursdays.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay,
That's the board meeting?
That's a board meeting day, and it would be like expanding that to a full day if people are available.
Okay.
okay, because I'm away all of May, so that's just fine.
Right.
And we found May is our normal meeting, planning meeting day, and we found there were so many conflicts around the table.
Okay, 11 months. So that would be a full day.
That would be a full day, if that works for people. Still
Should we
checking.
put it in now?
So then we no longer have a board meeting, it would just be.
We'll cancel the board meeting.
Okay,
Or if we do opt to have a board meeting, it'll be usually like an hour special meeting that we can work through the few things that we were working on that day.
I do have that meeting with our ministry client at 3 on that day.
Mhm.
So I would just need to scoot out just before. 3.
Okay,
That just happens to be one of the conflict.
mhm. So that day works for everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so shall we say we'll do, 9:30 to 3?
Do you want to plan it for 9:30 to 4? And then if Julie needs to leave for the 3, we do it, and if we can always release the time easier than trying to add the time.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so let's say 4 o'clock.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, it's much easier to.
I know just yeah, just to find out more. Okay, where are we here?
Okay, so you've set that you've put that as the meeting invite. Can you?
I will
expand
adjust
it?
the
Yeah,
invite, yes,
okay.
I will adjust the invite and get that out this afternoon to everybody.
Great. Then our next discussion item is the Respectful Workplaces Compliance Report.
All right, so we have 2 of them back to back here. I'm just going to pull them up. They all have different functions. So really, we have 3 items that come through to you that have to do with risk management. Last month, we did the one that had to do with respectful workplaces. And that was our violence pieces that we were looking at. I'm sorry, we had our joint health and safety report that had to do with, our goals and our achievements of the previous goals. So this one is our respectful workplaces, which is our policy on everything that has to do with health and safety from a workplace. So we don't have harassment, discrimination, sexual harassment, sexual discrimination is all separate pieces, because we find that most people question at what point does it cross from one to the other. So we deal with them together. So this report deals with anything that has to do with a violence aspect in our workplace. So the types of incidents that we're looking for are here, including anything that we report to the police. Our staff at any point can come to us and report that. They also have the ability to report to us and or to the police. So there's nothing that stops a person from not taking the criminal action if it meets criminality as well. So in 22, we did significantly better than in 21. I'll just put out there that in 21, this was a much longer report, as well as 20 was not so bad because we didn't open until the spring, until the late fall, summer. But 21, there was a lot of masking, COVID aggression. Take your stupid mask off. I don't want to talk to you, like just, you know, those types of things. People who were refusing to wear a mask when there was a bylaw, and we had to then involve bylaw officers and police because it was, they put the onus on the owner, not on the province, put the onus on the owner, not on the individual. So we were the ones who were being cited. So we had no option but to involve police, and many people were taking the opportunity to prove their civil liberties loudly because it was their opportunity to do that. So now that there are no mask mandates, that has gone down. We're not getting that same level. And I would say that what we're getting now is continuing on with the microaggression. That has always been, you know, people who are irritated will take it out on a person that is easy to take it out on. There are more people who are irritated in the world than there used to be. People's fuses are shorter, and the customer service aspect has certainly increased on these aggressions that are coming our way. We're still getting issues with staff who choose to wear a mask. And our staff wear masks if they have been sick and you are required to wear them for 10 days. It is our policy that I mandate that, because I don't want a person who had COVID to come back to work and then our building goes down. I will say that we are at 36 months, 35 and a half months, and we have not had a COVID outbreak in this building. We're the only one who has not had that. We have had many cases of COVID. Almost every employee has gotten COVID. But the process of what we do before, during, and after has not had person one transmit to person two. So in that, it's not a case that COVID hasn't entered our building. It's that what we're doing is working. And part of that is when you return from any leave, you wear a mask for 10 days. When you've been on an airplane, you wear a mask for 10 days, because these are things that we know by the time you get sick, it's already been passed around the building. So we do get those types of situations that people are still upset because we tend to wear masks on and off in the building as needed.
But some people just don't understand.
The other piece that we've had are some ongoing mental health with patrons. It is one patron that we have been working with for quite some time. We've had 2 separate occasions. We have not had to deal with police and no trespassing acts. We really try not to do that, especially with mental health, because we know that the person is struggling in ways that we're sort of the constant. Not that you want to tell our team and our staff, suck it up and deal with it. We have to make sure they're well protected. But at the same point, we also understand that we have a role in a social service world that public libraries have taken on. So how we deal with that is we make sure that our staff are well trained. We make sure that our staff have backups. We make sure that our staff have all the trigger words that they can say something to another staff when either they need some assistance or they just need to get off the desk following a situation. And that is our best way of handling all of these pieces. So I think compared to previous years, we are significantly in better shape than we've been. In previous years, just so you know, outside of COVID, we've had police actions, we've had drunken disorderlies, we've had abandoned children, we've had missing children, we've had injuries, we've had violence, domestic violence that has followed people into a building. These are things that public sector deals with. These are pieces that our staff are trained on. And when something happens, we immediately do postmortems. So we do something in the back room where sometimes I just like put a little note out and say, give us 5 minutes, we have to deal with something. And then we have monthly staff meetings that they become tabletop talks that we say, how can we have done it differently? What should we have done differently? If we change the scenario from something that was easier to this could have happened, what would you have done next? And it's the best way that we can keep our staff on their toes, well prepared, making sure that from a health and safety standpoint, as an employer, we are doing due diligence for them, but then also making sure that our community is as safe as they can be in the building. We have had some mental health situations that have trickled into patrons being impacted. So somebody who is unstable starts yelling or screaming or touching a child. You know, they're being too loud and they decide that it's within their purview to spank a child and teach them rightly. These are things we deal with. Whether or not the parent is there to intervene, whether we're the ones that have to intervene, whether the parent is off in the stacks and isn't realizing what's happening, and we need to get involved quickly for the protection. They're rare, but they happen, and our team is well trained and well prepared.
Can I just clarify the point about microaggressions? So they're growing, or they had grown since 2022?
They certainly have grown through the pandemic.
Okay.
I think that the tolerance level of people in general is very short fused. And the filters that we had in 2019 to think thoughts but not say them have gone away.
Someone gave them royal permission.
Yes, so
Yeah.
there's certainly, some of them are under the breath comments that are those types of microaggressions. Some of them are just, you know, letting you know the way it should be and making sure you know it, that usually the staff don't respond. It's just a smile and move on. The team are told to blame me, and I'm okay with that. I have big shoulders. You don't have to take it when someone doesn't like a policy. My business card is printed by the thousands and people are handed, if you don't like the policy, this is the person that you should talk to. And I will then meet with the person.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking is microaggressions are, you know, they are abuse.
Oh, most definitely. That's
They
why
are
they're in this
abuse,
report.
And to hear that the staff is having to, you know, deal with them, hear them, and it increased, you know, it's a concern for their own, you know, mental health, right? So it all ties into that, and I just, you know, is there a point at which there is more formal communication that needs to happen, or what role, back to mental health, what role can we play in reminding people about being respectful and what being respectful means? And you know, you may be upset, but you know, here's the complaints box.
Yes.
You know, just, you know, please do not, you know, your issues are with the, you know, I just want to make sure as a board that, because it's really not just, you know, if they're growing, it's a concern for the staff for sure. That we, if there are certain things that need to happen, I don't know what, if there's no number that we can address, but to be mindful that perhaps a more proactive role may, or actions or communications, you know.
So that's my question. Is there anything that the board needs to do?
Yeah.
From the board end, it's in the report because you need to know that these things are happening. It is not a difference that Ellie Shore is seeing more than the town hall is seeing, or more than Meaford Public Library is seeing, or more than the person is seeing when they go to Foodland. This is a phenomena that is taking on the country, the continent, and the globe. That is one of those outcomes of the pandemic. So it is a new normal that we need to be aware of. It's in the report because it is still an aspect of violence that falls under the description. It's pieces that I'm working on regularly with our staff, both on training and healing and wellness, as well as with our community. When I hear them, sometimes I'm present, sometimes I'm not present. I will come out, others will come out. And there is some of those training opportunities with community members that happen, but it is so overt now that it's a regular occurrence. It isn't even something that's being tracked anymore because it's such a commonplace piece that everybody in customer service fields are dealing with.
I'm getting conscious of the time.
Yes.
And I do move things along. And so I want to move on to the risk assessment report. And maybe we can go from the perspective of questions that people have. And I have, I usually do. The first one is under personnel, but it has more to do with overlapping with the budget. And I was wondering, it has to do with the 78,000 that you are suggesting in the budget report that we might consider returning to council. So my question is, there was originally a grant of over $160,000 to help with certain things. And so I guess, what were the terms of that?
The 160 was for the 2022 fiscal. It was a bridge year amount that would be in addition to our 6%, because 22 was the year that we couldn't budget the previous year, which had already been allocated on our first year of the funding agreement. And it was also the same year that the salary study was being done. So it was kind of a perfect storm between you can't move the numbers now, even though the numbers don't relate anymore. So they gave us the 160, which would have been the increase by the salary study.
And that was salary study addressed pay equity and internal equity.
Yes.
And we somehow the 160 was calculated, not sure by whom, but there's obviously things that changed that we didn't need to use the entire amount. So what are the things that that changed, that shifted that for us?
One was a maternity leave, so we didn't pay the person during the maternity leave. And then the other was our communication person took another position, and knowing that the previous bylaw of council was telling us that we had to make a COLA, cost of living allowance increase based on the CPI, which at the time was 8.9%. I did not replace that position, waiting to know what is council going to do. Since then, council has told us that the cost of living allowance will be 3% for 2023. Since we're still short, we haven't replaced that position. So we did save money on those two pieces. We certainly could go back and ask if that 70,000 is something that could be kept in, because that is the difference between the two fiscals that we're going to have a shortfall. Between this year and 25 are the 2 years that we have that shortfall.
But we have a surplus, so I think that's
That's it, yeah.
that's the part, but that was hard for me to understand too.
And you also mentioned somewhere, it might be here, about you managed to make a number of positions full-time, but there were still other positions that I think you were saying you would like to make full-time, but weren't. So can this money be used for that, or is it really limited to pay equity, internal equity for a particular package?
It was specific to the difference of the wages for 22. So that would be a discussion if finance is willing to allow that to be used on any other fiscal year, before we look at how else it could be used. So if it's a case of wages, are they even willing to consider it to be used for 23 or on?
And when you say finance, you're talking about town finance department.
Finance department, which would have to go back to council. to ask because council approved that.
Okay, so based on what they originally approved, we have a surplus we can't use for anything else unless we go back to talk to them.
Yes.
about doing so.
Everything's very specific, right?
The
Everything's
other
approved.
surplus, we have full reign to do that how we choose. That was part of our funding agreement. This was not part of the funding agreement. It was a little pot that was put in because they knew that the funding agreement was a year behind on the wages, and that big bump was gonna decimate us. Like, there wasn't enough money on what the 6% was gonna give us to even cover wages, let alone add operations in.
Mhm.
So that's why they gave us the 160.
And the main reason we didn't use that amount of money is because.
Maternity leave and then me being fiscally responsible and not hiring somebody in until the decision was made by the new council on what that cost of living would be.
Okay. That was my question on the risk assessment.
Yes.
That risk.
8.9% was scary. I didn't think that was going to happen, but even if it was 4%, we don't have the funds to cover a 4%.
So are we gonna hire that person this coming year, or this current year?
I don't have the person in for this year.
Okay. So you thought you needed.
We still have a
person.
shortfall.
We need a person.
Mhm.
They gave us money. But we didn't hire because we thought we might go over, but we didn't.
We had a person in place. And then the person left. So I didn't rehire because the 160 that they gave us was going to get us through 23, but it wasn't going to get us through 24 or 25 or 26. So when I knew that person was gone, I didn't replace that position so that I could make sure that we didn't have as much of a shortfall this year.
That's okay.
It avoids laying off somebody else downstream.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Or having to cut so far into other budgets that you have people, but you don't have anything to provide to them.
Yeah.
But if that person hadn't have left, we'd be in a bigger problem.
We'd be having other discussions in camera.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful.
My other question on the risk assessment was really under the last page, where you go through Lake Shore and the depot in terms of the issues, and wondering how significant these problems are. So the problem to identify is the bathroom plumbing, which you mentioned. But it sounds like you got the windows sort of, the rotten falling out windows are in line. But the HVAC at Heritage Depot is a concern.
Yeah,
So what I'm
Yes.
wondering is, how big are these problems and what role should you put the board in helping to address them?
At this point, many of the projects are in this year's budget, with the town. Community has until I believe March 14th to make their comments. So at this point, I'm hoping that pieces like the windows, which we know are in part in this year, and we'll be advocating for them to be in next year again. The bathroom, there's pieces of some repairs that they want to do. I'm not quite sure how they can do all of them without getting into an AODA matter. Our ceiling fans are scheduled to be done eminently. I know they were ordered as part of the 21, we just haven't gotten them. And then the story tower is not in the budget. So although it's something that was approved, talked about, we know it's still down the line, and I think we're going to be, the board will be involved on those types of pieces when we start having conversations with council, when we start doing deputations to council, reminding them of these pieces that are coming up. The HVAC is a big piece with the depot. We had close to 500,000 that came in from Ontario Trillium. It was one of the pieces that was going to happen. It was 3 years that we could spend the money in. By the time they got to the project later in the pandemic, the prices are about 3 times as much, and we don't have the money to do the HVAC. So the exterior has basically taken everything. It was a choice between, do we put in an HVAC that is wonderful and works and is doing what it's supposed to do, but it's still pulling through moldy floors because they're open to the outside? Or do we seal the building, which we did? So now we've sealed the building, but we still need to get the HVAC system in. It's not an HVAC system that you put in your house. It is a museum HVAC system. So it's not a $10,000 project. It's a $200,000-$300,000 project. So it is something that will have to be, again, pushed for with the town. Making sure this is something that gets written in. Now that $500,000 has just been put into the building from outside sources, it does make our argument stronger that it isn't a question of, is this building sound? All that's left is the HVAC, and then any future repairs that they want to do in the future, and parking lots and things that are all within their purview. So I think that the board will be involved in these in coming months as we start making our deputations to council.
Is HVAC a health and safety issue?
We're compensating for the HVAC. We're just compensating in ways that are questionable. So for example, the humidity should be part of our HVAC. We ended up having humidifiers all throughout the building, and then there was a leak from one of the humidifiers, which did damage, caused the fire department to be there, and now we're replacing security systems because it leaked through the floor. It took out electrical. So there's those types of things that are, if you just fix the problem, we won't have other problems that resolve out of them. If we weren't doing what we're doing, we would have health and safety, but we're making sure that there is no health and safety. It's materials that are in question. So the HVAC is taken care of for people's health and breathing. But if we don't maintain the right temperature control and humidity control, the local history and artifacts that we hold, that's where the danger is.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have questions around this report? Okay, seeing none, let's move on. I'm wondering if we can shift our timing and go on to budget at this point. And come back to these other items towards the end of the agenda, because I think there's less.
So, Madam Chair, I have an option for you, and this is something to consider. I did give the budget. We know that the town's budget is in the holding pattern until March. There is no, I know we're deciding on 23, but there's impacts to 24 that are decided based on what happens. Certainly with time and waiting for council to make their decision, we also could defer this until March. It's not going to impact me because I'm still doing what I'm doing.
I do have a number of just questions to try to understand it, and I have to be home by 4 o'clock, so I think
Good suggestion.
moving it to March would be preferable than trying to rush through it.
Okay, everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
Works for me. Okay, just for simplicity of the agenda, maybe I have a motion to defer discussions of both finance 2301 entitled fourth quarter balance variant and the 2023 proposed BMPL budget, to defer these two to the March meeting. So, Chris, I think you're looking this way. Chris, Pat. So those are our movers and seconders to defer those two reports to March.
And if you wanted to go through the first one, the Q4, there's not as much.
Can I just ask? Well, no, because I think it fits the whole thing, but can I just ask a simple question? Our fiscal year is calendar, so Q4, we just don't have the full year, is that it?
So this
You're
was,
presenting the quarterly,
we only do quarterly reports to the board. So this would have been
You don't
the
do year
October,
budget?
November, December.
oh, that's what the audit, okay.
Audit will be the full year.
Right, so you are getting the information of the last quarter, which was the October, November,
Yeah.
December. It is also an end of year unaudited, because even though it's just focusing on those three, the year end totals are of the whole calendar year.
Okay,
So you'll receive next Q1, which will be January, February, March, and you should get that in April.
and council is deferring what, the 23 budget? you said we're not in a rush to have it?
Council has presented, yeah, no, they haven't deferred anything, they've presented it. It's now in the hands of the community to make comments and reread the document.
But
And
they
then,
presented what, the budget for 23?
yes,
Okay, so this is our quarterly and our budget, but we don't have to have the budget for 23 approved by our board until March.
we don't have to have, it's not tied at all with council. So we can certainly do it today because we know what our number is that they're giving us. The question that I'm bringing in is, since we know that we're approving a budget that has deficits in it, and we're going to be using some of our own money to cover that. If you want to know the exact number for next year, we won't know that until March 14th, when it is passed by council.
Okay, that's what I would be.
Just because we have deficits this year, we don't have a deficit planned next year because we have people on mat leave. But then the year after, there's another deficit. Well, we get through this bubble of catching up
Yeah,
with the wages. And then the 26 year, we're back to like $28,000 in the black. We're no longer in a deficit. So if you're feeling more comfortable saying, we know 100% what's coming into us next year's budget, as you're approving these forward thinking deficits getting through, or if you want me to go back to council and have some early discussions with the finance team about, can we use this 70,000 that was wage money from last year and hold it into this, knowing that we've got these deficits. I can bring all of that
And their
information.
wage deficits.
They were wage deficits that we have now. And it was a wage surplus from 22 because of mat leaves
Right.
and not replacing a position. Yes.
So I think it's an excellent idea to defer this full discussion to next, because I think it's quite complex.
yeah,
So we have a move by Chris, second by Pat, to defer these two items, the Q4 and the next year's budget, to the March meeting. Any other discussion on that?
I'm just wondering, since you said that you might be going back to staff to ask about that 70,000, would we know the answer to that by that much?
I don't think we should ask the question until we've had the board discussion.
so it's not too late to ask it after March meeting?
I don't think Ian, because they don't know that we have the surplus, so they.
They do know, yes, because we're actually starting,
Well, the
we're already
surplus is
starting
22.
transfers. Right, I can have conversations with them because they're expecting the funds back. I will have conversations with them to see if that's something that we at least know what the steps are. I will communicate with our chair and see if this is anything that we need to communicate with the board in the meantime. Or if they say I need to go to council to keep you apprised, and I will bring information back at the March meeting. And if I have any information that is determined, I will adjust the budget accordingly.
Because I think
That makes
knowing
sense.
that would help in the March meeting.
Most certainly.
Yes.
Because if you have to still take it back, that makes for a very different conversation than if we can still make use of it.
Correct.
May I ask Sean a question?
Sure.
Is municipal government similar to provincial in that in year end, there's a lot of like, where do we have extra money? Where did we not spend it so we can fund these other 16 million priorities we have?
Well, if there was, it wasn't really laid out to us.
Okay,
It was mostly finance. Very kindly printed us up those 260-page books that were, the budget. And a lot of it was up to us to ask for more information, because it wasn't like reading a regular profit and loss statement either. It was just,
Data.
wish I may, wish I might, give me this for that, right? And unless we asked, we would get more specific information, but and in some, yeah, it would show that there would be, there would be losses or surpluses, but it was real, I hate to say the word vague. Most of it's pretty vague. It's available, but how far do you want to dig into it, right?
yeah,
With the other departments, there was never any question or discussion with the library. That never happened. That's why I didn't email.
Right, we're on
Some of
page, I think it was page 6, one paragraph that says the amount that will be given
Yeah.
is.
And it was just like on the radar, like nobody asks questions,
So
nobody.
do you ever go to
That's
like
good.
zero-based budgeting or to
Bad
say,
idea.
or to say that there's a target this year, you have to cut 5% from your budget?
No,
They did zero-based budgeting in the middle of last year. Every department had to go to be able to start over.
Oh, okay.
So they did do it in, I did it in 18 because I was new. I came in 17 and I figured it's time to just redo this and think about what I think we need. So we did it in 18. The town requested everybody, including us, do it in 19. So we did it again in 19. And then they split their departments between 19 and 20. And then from that point now, there's been a bit more projection. And the budgets are now looking at 3 years out.
Oh,
So that just like our budget, I'm projecting what this year is as a request, but I'm projecting what 24 and 25 will be. And I didn't give it to you, but I also did 26, which is why I know that we're not going to have a continued deficit. We round the hump of the wages with the assumption of what we'll be getting on an annual basis of what the 6% will equal of council's typical growth and what a 3% maximum cost of living would be with our wages. That's why I know that we're going to come out of this in the 26 fiscal. Why we have a 25 deficit for wages and a 23 deficit for wages, and 24 being lots of mat leaves that help us out a bit.
How do you put that on a service?
People are taking 18 months, so I know when they're due and I know
Oh,
when they
okay.
won't be back for. And then purposely, we have chosen not to backfill those positions. So I'm taking on some manager roles and just adding them in and saying, we can work some of these things out. We'll split some work around, we'll shuffle people around and do some things and help to get through that so that we don't have a $70,000 deficit that we're talking
Okay,
about.
I hear you
Small.
being a very good manager and handling this, but I'm wondering from the town perspective, is this the same process that would occur in all the other departments?
Yes.
Because as a taxpayer, you don't want to be constantly escalating budgets for each department.
No, everything, every budget, every department's budget was gone over. And even some that was painfully gone over for almost several hours worth of discussion, when the bottom line says taxation $0, because they're all paid for by development charges. So everything was scrutinized.
Okay.
And it's based on assessment, but importantly to keep in mind with all of our budgets, which I don't want to get into the town's discussion, but it impacts us. The tax increases to individuals is kept very small because we're the second fastest growing community in Canada, that we have all these new assessments coming online. If we were a stagnant community, this is a very different discussion because we're talking about the cost of living going up by 3% every year.
Yeah.
And that's now part of our policy.
Hmm.
That it's going to be based on the CPI, but if we're at 4%, 8%, they're getting 3%. What's keeping us very level on most of this from a taxpayer end is that we have such a fast growing community that more new taxes are coming in, which shrink down how much of an increase there is overall.
So if
So
you're basing their
we need to
budget
be aware of that because there's going to come a point,
where it's not.
maybe not in our lifetime, maybe not in the next 10 years, I don't know, but at some point, this is gonna level off because there's only so much construction that one community can have, that we have to be aware of where some of those infrastructures and pieces come in to be able to maintain them.
Well, and plus the town was looking at a lot of developmental charges, but now Ford has impacted that too. So there's repercussions all the way down the chain, to my knowledge anyway, so.
Development charges will be impacted. And there was a good presentation of council, I was gonna actually mention in the roundtable, that happened on Monday, one of the first deputations. Very high level thinking of what the new Development Charges Act and what the Bill 23 is going to do and how some of that development charges, which is how we fund a new library, will start to impact us, that we all need to be aware of. The council has already started talking about their development charge study. It must be passed by April of next year. And I will be an active part of that
Okay.
to make sure that our library is included in that. But there are a lot of changes that have come down from the province, including how far back we have to look. So the library was part of the DC's. Luckily, for many DC studies going back, a big chunk went in for this current one, which is gonna really save us as we move forward, because the people who had lower numbers over the 15 years or lower percentages that the DC should be saved for, it's gonna hurt them because they didn't have enough of a cushion. And they're also making you roll in how much you can collect in each year. So even though you know 100% of what you need, in year one, you're only taking in 80% of that. So you're starting with deficits. It's gonna be a very interesting thing. Certainly if it's something you're interested in more information on, the DC company who consults for the town gave a good overview of that. And it is something that we'll have to be
With
watching.
as much information as he had.
Certainly, it's
That's
changing still. It hasn't all been rolled out, but it's going to impact us in a new build.
So we have a motion on the table to defer these two reports to March. I'm not gonna ask for more discussion, because we've had quite a bit, so all in favor of deferring. Thank you very much, that is carried. I am also aware that this is coming up to almost a 3-hour meeting. And the remaining items we had for discussion, none of them are pressing in terms of time. So this would be the report from the boot camp attendees, the orientation on February 6th, discussion of our training needs, and rec for board assembly. We feel we need to do.
I mean, I could quickly give you an overview, like a 3-sentence about the boot camp. You want me to go ahead? I thought it was excellent. That was the best overview of governance that I have ever heard, and I've been involved with a lot of governance organizations. I was really impressed with it. It feels to me like it is a mature industry, the library. I haven't got all the acronyms right, but the associations and the
Library Board Association.
yeah, and that speaker, she was such a young woman. She was so knowledgeable. I was just really impressed with that. So I thought that was great. It was impressive to see that there was people from Winnipeg at the meeting, and Sabrina, you told me that we're the largest provincial group, so people do come from elsewhere. And I also found the session on sort of the future trends and recession and what that would mean for a library. It just really opened my eyes. So that would be my perspective. I don't know if anyone else was there.
That changed.
It is
Yeah.
still available until the end of June. So certainly if you would like to watch it, we have the access codes that you can do that.
Okay. Great, okay.
Crossed one off for the next.
Yeah, we did. Well, this next one might be fairly quick too, the orientation on February 6th. If people have questions on that weren't addressed at the meeting.
Well done.
Yes, very impressed.
It was good to see the good showing to board members for it.
Yes.
Get your faces out there to them too, especially when June leaned into me and just, what's her name? I'm like, Julia, just like, right?
Yeah.
She grew out of context, I guess, right?
Well, she came to my door. It's the first time I ever met her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Being a nurse, and I was a nurse, so
Mhm.
well, that's good.
Well, some of us were skiing in Sun Peaks. We couldn't go. So
We were
they,
well represented.
yes, that's great.
Sorry.
Let's move the board training discussion on the governance hubs. I think you were planning on looking at the governance hub and seeing what's available, so let's defer that to March. And the board assembly representative, I don't know if you have enough information to make a decision on that. And do we even know meeting dates yet, Sabrina?
I have general dates, but not theirs. So there's a training that OLS is doing. That would be
That's
for
next Thursday,
everybody,
right?
and then the other one they have not given dates for yet.
There was something, but next Thursday, I'm not available, but I thought was that not the assembly? The equipping?
The governance hub dates are coming up. Online ones, there's one on the 25th of February, the 28th and March 8th, but there are two of them that are in person in our area, and this will be similar to what the OLBA day was, but very concise and just a little bit of an overview for new boards. And it's not put on by the Boards Association, this is put on by the Ontario Library Services. But Grey County is being offered one on May 13th. And that is going to be at Owen Sound Public Library. Then there's another one that's in Simcoe County that's at the ESSA in Angus, the ESSA branch, which is a bit further. And then there are several of them online. So that was just something I didn't know if we wanted to talk about it. It doesn't have to be done April and May. We can talk about it in May if we want to do face-to-face. But if we're not looking at face-to-face, then we should be registering for the online. If we're doing it at all.
If we're doing face-to-face, we should be registering.
We should be, but we can wait until March to do it.
Okay,
The onlines are this month.
I see what you're saying.
And why do we need this? Sorry, I'm missing the context.
It is an overview on the governance hub, which is the main training portal for board trustees. So Lori has been through this training. Do you want our board to do this? Do we want this as a whole board to do this? Do we want a few of our members who can to do it and bring it back as a train the trainer? Do you want me to do it and walk you through again? I'm happy with any of those options. And certainly, even if it's a case where only a few people can attend and you want to do it, we don't have to have the whole board. It's just, what do we choose to do?
Okay, and I don't actually remember the training well enough to answer your question. So is there any interest in everybody going on May 13th for this overall board training? But it sounds like very much like what you just did.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that there's a lot of merit in trying.
The one piece that would be of interest from the May 13th. I'm a little cautious of doing Simcoe County because Simcoe County's got some stuff going on in their county libraries, and I would prefer we don't even interact.
Don't taint us.
No, but Grey County, although you can get the same information from me and you can get the same information from watching it online, being in a room with 10 or 12 other libraries in Grey County is a good networking opportunity. Especially since we have a predominantly new board who has not worked in public libraries, it would be an interesting experience. Outside of that, though, I'm happy to bring the information back and do a brief overview of what the hub has. And then if there's any key training pieces that we want to watch, the short snippet videos that they do, we'll just plan that into our time.
I would love to go, but I'm gonna be in Amsterdam, so I can't on May 13th.
Other thoughts and you,
I'm possibly available
I
then.
would love to, but
I might be available May. I certainly can't do the February ones, so,
The February online.
yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm kind of in over my head right now.
Mhm. So would you like to bring this back to the March meeting for further discussion?
so that means we.
You would miss all online,
But these are open for May 13th.
yes,
Is there an option for some of us to do online?
most certainly,
Yeah,
even if
okay.
you do
Yeah,
both of
yeah.
them, it's not
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do the 13th.
birthday.
I was gonna say it's my birthday. and
Is it?
I'd rather spend my birthday doing else.
Yeah, I just can't make it. That's so cool.
That's funny.
But yeah,
So how about anybody who is interested in doing the online? I will send these days out right after this on email. If you're interested, I will help you to register. It may be a redundant if we choose to do the 13th, but if everyone can attend and we do choose to do it, then at least we know we're covered. And then whatever doesn't work, I'll pick up the slack.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
That's so funny, yeah, because that's why I was waiting my turn. I was gonna say, I'd rather be doing something else with my birthday. I'm sorry.
Is that in February? Or May?
Yeah, so the reason that came up, Lori, is
I'm gonna be an answer.
you had asked about the
You're not-
bonus son.
I'm not sorry, you're right. I'm gonna be an answer.
We can take one for the team.
Okay,
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
bye. Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Yeah, so we'll also defer the board assembly discussion to March. We've got motions, it's not really that big a deal on my budget. And under roundtable, is there anything you wanted to point out?
I made my point that I was hoping to share.
Okay. Well, let's move on to key messages. And that's something that came out in, and there it is, for that. I don't know if you'd include anything in the budget on this earlier, so we might have to delete if you did.
I did not, but I will put in a note that we have deferred to March.
And I wondered if, under the hubs, which I thought it was a very thorough discussion of the building needs, and I'm wondering if maybe that can go in there, because I think it'd be useful to identify some of the needs of the building publicly, frankly.
Yeah, that's a really great idea.
I found your generator too.
You found my generator,
Yeah.
lovely.
So-
Maybe we can,
It's on a trailer in the fire department.
maybe we can get it on site here.
I said, it'd do a lot more use if it was, plunked down on a pad, hooked up to the library.
I noticed you didn't comment on the generator.
I was on top of it. I
We
took,
were all working yesterday and we had a little bubble of power. And it was like, everybody just did that grunt at the same time, as we all lost things, and it was like, I just kept thinking, generator.
I haven't let it go.
Thank you.
I'm
That's
dragging it.
what we need, is our board to know what is needed,
Yeah.
so that then when those opportunities come up, they don't all have to be planned advocacy. It's when you
Something,
walk into a situation, having that nugget, that's when it matters.
Yeah, I said to Chief Khan, I said, what would free up this trailer is if you put the generator on the ground beside the library.
And for a bit more context on this, the library was named as a cooling warming center in the event of a crisis.
And we're also the communication center in
Center.
the major plan for the town.
Yeah.
So everybody is supposed to come here in a
Right.
community emergency
Yeah,
from the press.
yeah.
But it seemed important to have a generator, so we would actually be a cooling or warming
Makes sense.
center, or a communication center
Mhm.
in such a case. So that's
That's
the
probably a
context.
way to word that as a key message.
I'm all over it. Just keep hitting them from both sides.
That's right.
Eventually we'll break them.
All right, so anything else that you wanted in the key messages?
I think it's, I'm okay with what's there for now. I would like to go back at some point to talk about the purpose of the key messages, because some of this is more about general marketing and things that are happening in the library, as opposed to what messages does the board want to put out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've pulled more things from the CEO report. And I don't know if we want to do those. I don't know if you want it to be just cleanly what the governance, what the board wants to talk about, what you do versus pulling things out of reports that have come from me, because then it does become more operational.
Yes, and it can be some operational, something, that's significant shift or something, but I think you already cover a lot of that kind of marketing or advertising anyway. So I would like to see this more focused on board stuff. But maybe that's another thing that comes up as part of our planning meeting, is what is the intent of this instrument? And are we using it as we should? And then I also linked in, you talked earlier about key messages now may simply be a link from the library
Newsletter.
news. So it doesn't have to stand alone as if you need a page of information
Right.
and we're trying to fill it up. Now it's just the key information that pops in from library news. Okay. But as for today, are we okay with what is here?
I agree.
Good. Okay. So may I have a mover and seconder that the board approve the release of the key messages update for February 2023. I saw Pat and Joanne. Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor? Lovely, thank you very much. It's carried. We have our next meeting, March 16th at 1 p.m. And as discussed earlier, we're doing the April 1, starting at 9:30 and making that our planning day. Is there anything else we need to talk about? Seeing none, then I will declare the meeting adjourned at 4 p.m.